The thunderous crack of a gunshot echoed across the Montana prairie as Bethany Haywood watched her father's wagon disappear into the golden horizon, leaving nothing but a trail of dust and broken promises in its wake. It was the summer of 1878, and at 18 years old, Bethany found herself utterly alone on the homestead her family had struggled to build for the past 3 years. Her father, consumed by gold fever after hearing rumors of a strike in the Black Hills, had abandoned her with nothing but $20, a dwindling pantry, and the crushing weight of unpaid debts. The warm evening air carried the scent of wild sage as Bethany stood frozen at the edge of their property, her father's parting words still ringing in her ears. "I'll send for you when I strike it rich, Beth. This claim will make us wealthy beyond our dreams." She had begged him not to go, had reminded him of her mother's dying wish that they stay together. But the lure of gold had proven stronger than family ties. Bethany wiped away angry tears as she trudged back to the small cabin that now felt impossibly large. The vastness of the Montana territory stretched in every direction, beautiful and terrifying in its isolation. Their nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and the small settlement of Redemption Creek lay a full day's ride south. She had never felt so utterly alone. Inside the cabin, she lit a lamp and sat at the rough-hewn table where just hours before, she and her father had shared their last meal together. The ledger book lay open, its pages filled with her careful handwriting documenting what they owed to the mercantile in town. Bethany traced her finger over the numbers that had grown steadily larger over the past months as crops failed and her father's desperation increased. She would have to figure something out. Winter was still months away, but without help for the harvest or money for supplies, she wouldn't survive it alone. Pride warred with practicality as she contemplated her options. She could sell the homestead, but who would buy it with its precarious situation? She could seek employment in town, but what skills did she have beyond farming and keeping house? As dawn broke the following morning, Bethany had made her decision. She would ride into Redemption Creek, speak honestly with Mr. Patterson at the mercantile about her father's departure, and see if she could arrange some sort of payment plan for their debts while finding work to support herself. The journey to town seemed longer without her father's companionship. Bethany guided her mare, Penny, along the rutted trail, her stomach knotting tighter with each mile. The summer sun beat down mercilessly, and by the time the weathered buildings of Redemption Creek came into view, her cotton dress clung uncomfortably to her back. The town had grown considerably since they'd first arrived in the territory. What had once been little more than a trading post had expanded to include a proper main street with a mercantile, a saloon, a small hotel, and various other establishments catering to settlers and those passing through to points west. Bethany tethered Penny outside the mercantile and smoothed her skirts before stepping inside. The bell above the door announced her arrival, and Mr. Patterson looked up from behind the counter. His initially friendly expression shifted to something more cautious when he recognized her. "Miss Haywood," he greeted, setting aside the inventory list he'd been reviewing. "I wasn't expecting to see you today. Is your father with you?" Bethany straightened her shoulders. "No, sir, my father has gone to seek his fortune in the Black Hills. He left yesterday." Patterson's bushy eyebrows rose toward his receding hairline. "Left you alone out there, did he? And what about his outstanding account?" "That's what I've come to discuss," Bethany said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I intend to honor our debts, Mr. Patterson. I'm hoping we might arrange a payment schedule, and perhaps you know of work available in town that would suit a woman in my circumstances." Patterson's expression softened slightly. "That's honorable of you, Miss Haywood, but your father's debts amount to nearly $60. That's not a sum easily worked off, especially for a young woman alone." Before Bethany could respond, the bell chimed again as the door swung open. A tall man in a dust-covered duster stepped inside, his Stetson pulled low over his eyes. He moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, and when he removed his hat, Bethany caught her breath at the startling blue of his eyes, which stood out against his sun-bronzed face. "Mr. Patterson," the man nodded. I've brought those supplies Sheriff Miller requested. Excellent timing, Mr. Evans, Patterson replied, clearly relieved by the interruption. Miss Haywood, this is Brock Evans. He works as a ranch hand at the Double Bar and occasionally helps the sheriff when needed. Brock Evans turned those striking eyes toward Bethany, offering a respectful nod. Miss Haywood, Mr. Evans, she replied, suddenly conscious of her travel-worn appearance. Miss Haywood has found herself in a difficult situation, Patterson continued. Her father has abandoned their homestead, leaving her with substantial debts and no means to pay them. Bethany's cheeks burned with humiliation. Mr. Patterson, I hardly think my personal affairs are no shame in hard times, Miss Haywood, Brock interrupted gently. This territory has broken stronger men than your father. You're showing more backbone by staying to face the music. Something in his direct yet compassionate assessment eased her embarrassment. There was no pity in his gaze, only a straightforward appraisal. Thank you, Mr. Evans, but I still need to find a way to manage on my own. Patterson cleared his throat. As it happens, Mrs. Miller was just saying yesterday that she's looking for help at the boarding house. With more folks passing through these days, she's struggling to keep up with the cooking and cleaning. That might be a start, Bethany said thoughtfully. The pay won't be much, Patterson warned. Not enough to clear your father's debt quickly and still support yourself. I'll find a way, Bethany insisted, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Brock Evans had been listening quietly, his expression thoughtful. The homestead, he said suddenly. You're planning to keep it. It's all I have, Bethany replied, though I'm not sure how I'll manage it alone. Good land. 20 acres with 10 cleared for planting. The soil's rich and there's a reliable creek on the north boundary. Brock nodded slowly. Your crops are in the ground now. Yes. Wheat and corn primarily. My father planted before he. She trailed off, unwilling to voice his betrayal again. Alone, you'll lose most of that harvest, Brock stated matter-of-factly. And without the harvest, you'll never clear your debts or survive the winter. Bethany bristled at his bluntness. I'm aware of my challenges, Mr. Evans. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Didn't mean to offend, Miss Haywood. I was thinking I might offer a solution. I've been saving to buy my own place someday. What if I help you bring in that harvest in exchange for a portion of the profits? You'd keep your land, have help with the heavy work, and we'd both benefit from the sale. Bethany studied him warily. Why would you help a stranger? I've been in this territory 5 years. Seen too many good folks lose everything because they had no one to turn to when times got hard, he shrugged. Besides, I'd be helping myself too. Fair arrangement benefits everyone involved. He's right about that, Patterson interjected, and Brock Evans is known to be a man of his word. Sheriff Miller vouches for him, and that counts for something in these parts. Bethany considered the proposal. Having help with the harvest would make all the difference, but inviting a man she barely knew to work alongside her would certainly raise eyebrows. Then again, her alternatives were few and increasingly desperate. I would need references beyond Mr. Patterson's assurances, she said finally. Brock nodded. Talk to Sheriff Miller, Mrs. Wilson at the hotel, and Reverend Jenkins. They all know me well enough. And we would need clear terms in writing, of course. I'll consider it, Mr. Evans. Thank you for the offer. As Bethany left the mercantile, her mind raced with possibilities. She spent the rest of the day speaking with the people Brock had mentioned, each of whom vouched for his character with surprising enthusiasm. Sheriff Miller described him as the most honest man I know, while Mrs. Wilson praised his unfailing politeness and work ethic. By the time she met with Mrs. Miller about the boarding house position, Bethany had nearly convinced herself that Brock's proposal might be the answer to her most pressing problems. The boarding house job would provide immediate income for necessities, while the partnership with Brock could save the harvest and potentially clear her father's debts. She found Brock at the small cafe as evening approached, just as Sheriff Miller had suggested she might. He was nursing a cup of coffee and looked up as she approached his table. Miss Haywood, he said, rising to his feet, please join me. Bethany sat across from him, hands folded primly in her lap. I've spoken with your references. They think quite highly of you. A slight flush colored his cheekbones. Good folks, all of them. I've decided to accept your proposal, Mr. Evans, provided we can agree on specific terms. She withdrew a folded paper from her pocket. I've written some thoughts here. Brock read through her notes carefully. 60-40 split in your favor seems fair, considering it's your land. You'll provide meals during workdays. I'll supply my own tools and labor, plus help with repairs to the barn and cabin as needed. He looked up. And you'll continue working at the boarding house in town while I manage daily farm operations. Yes, that arrangement would allow me to earn immediate income while ensuring the farm is properly tended. I would return each evening, of course. Brock considered this. It's a long ride to make twice daily. Perhaps you could stay in town during the week and return on weekends. I would remain at the farm to protect your property. Bethany frowned. That would mean you staying in my home without my presence. I don't think that would be appropriate, Mr. Evans. Not in your home, Miss Haywood. I could set up in the barn or build a simple shelter nearby. I'm used to rough accommodations. After further discussion, they reached a compromise. Bethany would stay in town 3 nights per week when her boarding house duties required it, while Brock would establish separate quarters in the old tool shed near the barn. On paper, it was a purely business arrangement. In practice, it represented an extraordinary level of trust between strangers. One more thing, Brock said as they finalized their agreement. I understand this is a business arrangement, but I want to be clear about my intentions. I aim to help you keep your land and clear your debts. Nothing more. Bethany appreciated his directness. Thank you for clarifying, Mr. Evans. I hope our partnership proves beneficial to us both. The next morning, Brock arrived at the homestead with his few possessions loaded on a sturdy bay gelding. He set to work immediately, assessing the fields and making notes about what needed attention first. Bethany was impressed by his methodical approach and obvious knowledge of farming. Your wheat looks good, he told her as they walked the property boundary. Another 3 weeks until harvest, I'd say. The corn needs attention, though some pests getting at it. I can mix up something to help with that. For the first week, they established a cautious rhythm. Bethany rode into town each morning to work at the boarding house, returning by late afternoon. Brock worked the fields during the day, making repairs when the midday sun grew too intense for fieldwork. They would share a simple evening meal, discussing the day's progress and plans for tomorrow, before retiring to their separate quarters. Brock proved to be a man of few words but considerable action. He reinforced the sagging corner of the barn, repaired the leaking roof on the chicken coop, and even fixed the stubborn pump handle that had frustrated Bethany for months. He never complained about the work or the heat, and he scrupulously maintained the boundaries of propriety between them. As July melted into August, Bethany found herself looking forward to their evening conversations. Brock had a dry wit that emerged once he became more comfortable in her presence, and he possessed a wealth of knowledge about the territory that fascinated her. He had worked as a cowboy, a freight driver, a miner, and even briefly as a deputy before settling into ranch work at the Double Bar. "Why haven't you bought your own land before now?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching lightning flicker on the distant horizon. Brock took a moment to answer, swirling the coffee in his cup. "Came west with nothing but ambition after the war. Took time to save enough for a proper start. I've seen too many fail because they rushed in without resources." He glanced at her, "Your father being one example." "He wasn't always so reckless," Bethany said softly. "After Mother died, something changed in him. It was like he couldn't bear the steadiness of our life anymore." "Grief does strange things to a man," Brock acknowledged. "Makes him seek either perfect stillness or constant motion. Your father chose motion. And you, what did you choose after the war?" Brock's expression turned distant. "Both, I suppose, moved constantly but kept everything else still inside." He seemed to catch himself revealing too much and straightened. "Storm's moving this way. Better secure that loose shutter on the north side before it hits." As summer progressed, their working relationship deepened into genuine friendship. Bethany found herself confiding in Brock about her hopes and fears, while he gradually shared stories from his past. They discovered shared interests in books and music, and Bethany was surprised to learn that the rugged cowboy could play the harmonica with surprising skill. The harvest began in late August, a backbreaking effort even with Brock's help. Bethany took a week away from her boarding house duties to assist, working alongside him from dawn until dusk. They fell into an easy partnership, anticipating each other's needs and movements with increasing synchronicity. On the third day of harvest, disaster nearly struck when Bethany's skirt caught in the threshing equipment. Brock moved with lightning speed, pulling her clear before the machinery could do more than tear the fabric. The momentum sent them both tumbling to the ground, with Brock twisting to take the brunt of the fall. For a breathless moment, they lay tangled together in the wheat stubble, his arms protectively around her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough with concern as he quickly released her and helped her sit up. "No," Bethany replied, her heart pounding from more than just the near accident. "Thanks to you." Something shifted between them after that day. An awareness that had been building subtly for weeks suddenly crystallized into undeniable attraction. Bethany found herself noticing details she'd overlooked before. The way sunlight caught in Brock's hair, revealing strands of copper among the brown. How his hands, rough from work yet surprisingly gentle, moved with grace and purpose. The rare but transformative nature of his full smile. For his part, Brock became both more attentive and more distant, increasing his professional courtesy while creating greater physical space between them. Bethany recognized his efforts to maintain propriety, and while she respected his intentions, she found herself increasingly drawn to the complex man who had become her partner in survival. Their carefully maintained boundaries faced a greater challenge in early September when 3 riders approached the homestead one afternoon while Bethany was alone. Brock had gone to town to negotiate with potential buyers for their wheat. The men, rough-looking and trail-worn, claimed to be looking for work, but their leering appraisal of Bethany and suspicious interest in the barn's contents sent warning signals through her mind. "My husband will be returning any moment," she lied smoothly, keeping her father's shotgun visible but not threatening. "He doesn't hire drifters, but the Wilkins place about 5 miles east might need help with their cattle." The leader, a sallow-faced man with a prominent scar across his jaw, dismounted despite her obvious dismissal. "Husband is it? Funny, word in town is James Haywood abandoned his daughter and headed for the Black Hills. Don't recall hearing about a husband." Bethany's grip tightened on the shotgun. "I suggest you move along, gentlemen. Whatever business you think you have here isn't welcome." The scarred man took another step forward. "Now, that's not very hospitable. We're just looking for a meal and maybe a place to rest our horses." The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted whatever he planned to say next. Bethany nearly sagged with relief when Brock appeared, riding hard toward the homestead. He assessed the situation instantly, positioning himself between Bethany and the strangers. "Afternoon," he said coolly, his right hand resting casually near his holstered revolver. "Can I help you gentlemen with something?" The leader's eyes narrowed. "Just passing through, the lady was about to offer us some refreshment." "The lady was about to send you on your way," Brock corrected. "And I'm inclined to reinforce that suggestion." A tense silence stretched between them until the scarred man finally shrugged. "No need for unpleasantness. We'll find hospitality elsewhere." As they rode away, Brock remained vigilant until they disappeared from sight. Only then did he turn to Bethany, concern evident in his expression. "Are you all right?" she nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "They seem to know about my father leaving. News travels fast in small communities," Brock said grimly. "And not everyone who hears such news has honorable intentions." That night, Brock insisted on sleeping on the cabin's porch rather than in his usual quarters by the barn. "Just until we're sure those men have moved on," he explained. "I don't trust their kind." The incident marked another turning point in their relationship. Brock's protective instincts had been revealed in full force, and Bethany could no longer deny the sense of security and comfort his presence provided. It wasn't just physical protection he offered, but emotional support that had gradually become essential to her well-being. 2 days later, another visitor arrived, this one official. Sheriff Miller rode up to inform them that the men who had confronted Bethany were wanted for robbery in a neighboring county. They had been apprehended after attempting to steal horses from a ranch north of town. "You were lucky," the sheriff told them. "Those men have hurt people before." "It was smart thinking to claim you had a husband, Miss Haywood, but it might be wiser to make that arrangement more permanent, given your situation." Bethany felt her cheeks flush at the implication, while Brock suddenly became very interested in adjusting his horse's saddle. After the sheriff departed, an awkward silence fell between them. Finally, Brock cleared his throat. "He means well, but your arrangements are your own business, Miss Haywood." "Bethany," she said suddenly. "After all these weeks working together, I think you might call me Bethany when we're alone." A slow smile spread across his face. "And I'm Brock, not Mr. Evans." Something loosened between them after that exchange. Their evening conversations grew longer and more personal. Brock spoke of his family back in Pennsylvania, whom he hadn't seen since before the war. Bethany shared memories of her mother, and the dreams she'd once had of becoming a teacher before her family's westward journey had interrupted her education. As September waned, they sold their wheat harvest for a handsome profit enough to clear Bethany's debt at the mercantile, with money left over for winter supplies. The corn harvest followed, equally successful thanks to Brock's intervention with the pest problem. By early October, their business arrangement had technically fulfilled its purpose, yet neither seemed eager to dissolve their partnership. "What happens now?" Bethany asked one evening as they sat by the fire, the first chill of autumn making the warmth welcome. Brock stared into the flames. "That depends on what you want, Bethany. The farm is secure for now. I could manage alone through winter with the debt cleared and supplies stocked." She hesitated. "But I find I'm not eager to return to solitude." "Nor am I eager to leave," Brock admitted quietly. Their eyes met across the small space, and Bethany felt something powerful pass between them, understanding, longing, possibility. "Perhaps," she suggested, her heart pounding, "we could consider a different arrangement." Before Brock could respond, a pounding at the door startled them both. Brock rose swiftly, hand moving to his gun as he approached the entrance. When he opened it, Bethany gasped at the sight of her father standing on the threshold, haggard and worn, his clothes tattered and his face gaunt with exhaustion and defeat. "Beth," James Haywood croaked, "I've come home." Bethany stood frozen as her father stumbled into the cabin. 3 months had transformed him from a robust man in his 40s to someone who appeared decades older. His eyes were sunken, his frame thin beneath filthy clothes. "What happened to you?" she finally managed. "The Black Hills were a bust for me," he admitted, collapsing into a chair. "Claim jumpers took what little I found, got robbed on the return journey, been walking for weeks." His bloodshot eyes shifted to Brock. "Who's this?" "Brock Evans," Bethany said. "My partner." James frowned. "Partner? What kind of partnership?" "The kind that saved your daughter's homestead and cleared your debts," Brock said evenly. "While you were chasing fool's gold," James bristled, but his exhaustion prevented him from rising to the challenge. "I made a mistake, Beth. I see that now. But I've come back to make it right." Bethany felt a complex storm of emotions, relief that her father was alive, anger at his abandonment, anxiety about what his return meant for her future with Brock. "You left me with nothing but debts and impossible choices," she said, her voice steady despite her turmoil. "If not for Brock, I would have lost everything. And I'll be forever in his debt for that," James conceded. "But I'm back now. We can be a family again." Brock moved toward the door. "You two have much to discuss. I'll check on the livestock." "No," Bethany said firmly, surprising both men. "Stay, Brock. Anything father needs to say can be said in front of you." James looked between them, realization dawning in his tired eyes. "It's like that, is it?" "It's like a man of honor stepping in when you abandoned your responsibilities," Bethany replied. "It's like finding someone I can trust absolutely when the person who should have protected me chose not to." "I deserve that," James acknowledged, "but I'm still your father, Beth." "Yes, you are. And this is still your land, legally speaking, but things have changed in your absence." "I've changed." The conversation continued late into the night, with James gradually understanding the full extent of what Bethany and Brock had accomplished together. As the reality of his daughter's newfound independence sank in, his blustering faded into genuine contrition. "I failed you," he admitted finally. Your mother would be ashamed of me but proud of you. What will you do now? Bethany asked. James considered this. If you'll have me, I'd like to earn back my place here. Not as the master of this homestead, I forfeited that right when I left, but as someone who can contribute. Bethany looked to Brock, who had remained respectfully quiet through much of their discussion. What do you think? Family is precious, he said carefully. And second chances matter, but trust once broken must be re-earned through actions, not words. James nodded slowly. Wise counsel. I can see why my daughter values you. The three of them reached an uneasy truce that night. James would stay in the tool shed where Brock had been living, working to contribute to the homestead while proving his commitment to staying. Brock would continue in his partnership with Bethany, though the nature of that partnership remained unspoken in James's presence. Over the following weeks, a new dynamic emerged. James worked diligently alongside them, accepting Brock's leadership without resentment. Gradually, Bethany's anger toward her father softened as she witnessed his genuine efforts at redemption. For his part, James came to respect the bond between Brock and his daughter, recognizing something in their connection that transcended ordinary partnership. The first snowfall of the season arrived in mid-November, earlier than expected. The three of them worked together to ensure the livestock were sheltered and firewood was stacked high against the cabin walls. That evening, as they sat around the fire, James cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said. "Brennan at the livery in town mentioned needing help this winter. Said he'd even provide a room in exchange for regular work." Bethany looked up from her mending. "You're considering leaving again," James shook his head. "Not leaving, just giving you two the space you deserve." He smiled sadly. "I'm not blind, Beth. What's between you and Brock is something special. My presence here complicates things." "You don't have to go," she protested, though without much conviction. "I think I do, at least for now." He looked at Brock. "You're a good man, Evans, better than I've been. My daughter deserves that goodness in her life." After James retired for the night, Bethany and Brock sat in charged silence, the implications of her father's words hanging between them. "He's right about one thing," Brock finally said. "What's between us is special, at least it is to me." Bethany set aside her mending. "And to me. I came here to help save your homestead, not expecting anything beyond a fair business arrangement. Instead, I found—" He paused, searching for words. "A partner," Bethany suggested. "A friend. So much more than that," Brock said softly. "I found the woman I want to build a life with, if she'll have me." Bethany crossed the small space between them and took his hands in hers. "I spent so much of my life being left behind. First my mother through death, then my father through choice. I was prepared to face the world alone." Her voice trembled slightly. "But then you arrived, offering help without taking my independence, protecting without controlling, supporting without demanding. I would never leave you behind," Brock promised. "Not willingly." "I know," Bethany said simply. "That's why I love you." The words, once spoken, seemed to release something that had been building between them for months. Brock drew her gently into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that spoke of tenderness and promise. When they finally parted, his blue eyes shone with emotion. "I love you, Bethany Haywood. I think I have since that day you stood in Patterson's store, determined to face impossible odds rather than run from them." 2 days later, James Haywood moved to town, taking the position at the livery. His departure was not another abandonment, but a gift space for his daughter's happiness to fully bloom. With her father settled nearby rather than truly gone, Bethany felt the last of her resentment fade into cautious forgiveness. As winter settled fully over the Montana prairie, Brock and Bethany's relationship deepened. They spoke of marriage in the spring, of children in the years to come, of expanding the farm and building a legacy together. Their evenings were filled with shared dreams and tender discoveries, their days with purposeful work toward common goals. On Christmas Eve, with snow falling gently outside, Brock knelt before Bethany with a small wooden box in his hand. Inside lay a simple gold band with a modest pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained. "I've carried it with me since leaving home, waiting for the right woman to give it to." He took her hand. "Bethany Haywood, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me on this land that you fought so hard to keep?" Tears shimmered in Bethany's eyes as she nodded. Yes, Brock Evans, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding took place on the first day of spring, with wildflowers just beginning to dot the prairie. James Haywood, sober and steady in his new life, proudly walked his daughter down the aisle created between rows of chairs set up outside the cabin. Sheriff Miller officiated, while what seemed like the entire population of Redemption Creek gathered to witness the union of two people whose partnership had become a local legend of perseverance and loyalty. As Bethany and Brock spoke their vows beneath the vast Montana sky, she reflected on the strange path that had brought her to this moment. Her father's abandonment, painful as it had been, had opened the door to finding a love deeper and truer than she had ever imagined possible. The man who had stepped in as her shield had become her partner in every sense, protecting her independence rather than replacing it, strengthening her resolve rather than overpowering it. "I take you, Brock Evans, as my husband," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Not as someone to rescue me, but as someone to stand beside me through whatever life brings. To build with me, dream with me, and face each sunrise together for all the days we're given." Brock's voice was steady as he repeated similar words, though Bethany saw the emotion shining in his eyes. When Sheriff Miller pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was a promise sealed before witnesses, a commitment to a shared future built on mutual respect and unwavering love. At the celebration afterward, James approached the newlyweds, a wrapped package in his hands. "A wedding gift," he said, presenting it to them. Inside was the deed to the homestead, transferred fully into Bethany's name. "It's yours now, officially," James said. "As it should be. You fought for it when I gave up." "Thank you, Father," Bethany said, embracing him. Later that night, as they stood on the porch of what was now truly their home, Brock wrapped his arms around his wife and gazed out at the land that had brought them together. "From business partners to life partners," he mused. "Not the path I expected when I rode onto this homestead last summer." "The best journeys often aren't the ones we plan," Bethany replied, leaning back against his chest. "Sometimes they're the ones that find us when we're just trying to survive." As stars appeared in the vast Montana sky, Bethany Haywood Evans knew with absolute certainty that she would never be left behind again. The cowboy who had stepped in as her shield had become her husband, her partner, her future. Together, they would build something lasting on this land, a legacy of love born from adversity, stronger for the trials that had forged it.